Yeah, exactly. And that was perfect for you guys.
Yeah, no, I like the location.
Because I thought the middle schoolers walk by there all the time, but
Yeah.
they're, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Cool.
Evening, I saw one out there.
Oh, yes, there, tomorrow will be another break. I need to talk to you, I need to come here, see where you want it at your office, where we can fit it in front.
Okay, it doesn't matter. You want to take a picture?
Just come to your office. Okay, because it's obviously gonna be not, you know, tripping people.
Right in front of you.
Yeah, so that we can get in. Okay, I'll do
Yeah,
that.
it's,
Okay, that's good, thank you. That makes my life a little bit easier to kind of, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so tomorrow will be, actually starting a day early. Because we're going to North Dakota. We're gonna finish the drawings. We'll stay rain all day. So I gotta find my rain boots and, because I've been traveling around with guys, doing it all, you know. Because they want my blessing before they can tell and, you know. So, so anyway, we are a day ahead. You know, we could start around and fill that 3 out, and then we should like set up tomorrow. I think, I don't know. Oh, no, it's not that. It's, the base is probably, I thought it said, yeah, it's probably, the base is probably here, between 50 and 75. I mean, it's heavy, and then it's bolted to it, and the Philip itself is probably 40. It was supposed to be, I thought it was gonna be like 70, but we touched it. Hey, Steve, how are you? It's not gonna blow, I mean, if we had a tornado, but then everything's gonna blow, right? Oh, no, you just.
Sorry.
Hey, you've not got some wood. Hey, Roland, how are you? I have no idea. I might be you. Nope. All right. I got it.
I'm just gonna work with that.
Oh, yeah. I actually saw it. I didn't get to heard anything. Oh, are you? Yeah, yeah. When there have been cases in the past.
I don't know what
And
just told me.
just asked.
Well, it's 7:02,
Yeah.
and I'll call this meeting to order. Would everyone please rise for the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tom, would you please call roll?
Councilor Mellon,
Present.
Councilor Tulowitzki,
Present.
Ryan Specht,
Here.
Roland Raffin,
Here.
and Councilor Kulturitis, Stuart Friedman, and Bill Baker are all absent with notice.
Well, the next item on the agenda is PC 20009, Guy Costanza GM contract and request modifications to the building frontage at 407, 411 Ridge Road. Tom, I'll turn this over to you for staff report and presentation.
Okay, I will be brief because it's, there's not a lot of new information from the last meeting that we had. As you are aware, we're having discussions about how to resolve the question of the grade of the building that's partially built at 407, 411 Ridge Road. At the last meeting, there was a discussion about the location of utilities in the public right-of-way. And the suggestion was made that the town's recommendation to relocate the fire hydrant and the street light, as well as install parkway trees would not be possible because of the location of some utilities. Gary Torringa had stated at the meeting that they were planning on getting a utility, getting those utilities located. They did do that. They provided this utility locate scan, which is was attached to the staff report. I won't go through it really in detail, but you can see that there are utilities here and here, and then there's some located in the grass. They are a telephone line, a fiber optic line, and an electric line. So we did review that report, and it's the opinion of the town staff, including Jill, town engineer, that the location of those utilities would not prohibit the relocation of the hydrant and the light or the installation of parkway trees in the suggested locations.
Well, excuse me, the utilities can what?
It's our it's our opinion that the location of the utilities as shown here in this report do not preclude the implementation of the plan that was presented last month or 2 weeks ago, meaning with the relocation of the fire hydrant, the relocation of the light pole, and the installation of parkway trees within that area adjacent to the curb.
I understand it, but
Well, Gary will go through his presentation, then I'll call you guys up and do your presentation, okay?
I just want to make sure it's understood.
Yeah.
That plan last time I showed, I pointed out that was strictly for discussion.
And I'll
based
give you
on-
plenty enough time to talk.
All right.
We're here as long as we need.
Oh, no, we're not here forever.
Go
It's been
ahead.
a long week. It's only Tuesday, guys. We're not doing it forever.
So this is the plan that was presented to Gary as the town's preferred alternative. This is, you'll recall that this is the plan that was that had been presented to the Plan Commission prior. And that is based on that information that we've received in the staff report, you'll see that our staff recommendation is the same. We're still recommending that this plan be implemented, and there are 7 conditions in addition to that we're recommending. I will note that at the last meeting, it was stated that the applicant was opposed to installing additional stairs on the east side of the building. That was kind of briefly discussed at that meeting, and we don't have any strong attachment to that condition. So we're fine. I mean, we can strike that from the recommendation if that's the desire of the board.
That's condition number 6. Yes, condition number 6. So the conditions would be as listed here. Plans be subject to a final review by the town engineer. The west side of the building will be modified by regrading and installation of additional bricks so that there won't be any unfinished concrete shown. A revised landscaping plan be submitted for town staff approval. Just so the reason why we're suggesting that the revised landscaping plan be provided is because the existing plan that we have on file is based on a different site plan that doesn't have these changes. So we would want to see an alternative plan that takes into account these, the modifications to the site plan. And then the 4th condition would be that the storefronts be modified with recessed entries to effectively have a 5-foot clear path along that stoop. 5th condition is that the stoop be constructed of the same masonry used on the building, so it has a sort of a coherent style. And then finally, the 7th condition is that essentially the town attorney work with the applicant to figure out the best way to legally permit the encroachment into the town right of way.
Any questions for staff? That being said, it'd be best to turn over. Mr. Reed, are you speaking on this?
Well, I suppose.
John, can you go through simplistically, go through the 7 conditions and address each one of those?
Yes, I'm not here to belabor any points of the 7 items at the bottom. I think, well, but before we start that, I think that right above that recommendation, this are the 7 items under the recommendation. Above that talks about Ms. DiTomaso's opinion that the utilities don't prohibit the movement of the light pole and of the fire hydrant. Well, prohibit is an interesting word. I suppose if you have enough money, you can do anything. We had fiber optic cables laying along the railroad tracks where the underpass went. They were movable for exactly roughly $500,000. Okay, so you can do anything. You can't do anything when you're building a 2,735 square foot building. Okay, we don't believe it's even possibly feasible to do that, and really can't promise to do that. You go down to the 7 items. We have no issue with item number 1. Final review by a town engineer. It's not a problem as long as everything meets the proper standards of engineering. We would expect to have no issue with it. Item number 2, the way we're going to handle that, we cannot. We have tried to raise the folks at NICD multiple times, Gary and I both, to no avail. We have not gotten any response from anybody at NICD about doing that. What we have asked to do in that side would be to, we're going to cut down the foundation on that side, I think 6 inches, roughly. The brick ledge, 6 inches. Going to grade it. I know there's not a lot of room to grade it, but we're going to grade it. The brick is going to be right at grade level. So it's not going to be any of that foundation showing. It'll be very attractive on that side. Whatever it takes to maintain it, we're just going to have to do that. So we don't really have any issue with that. There won't be any unfinished concrete shown. The revised landscape plan, we have no problem submitting that. And as long as it meets code, we would expect not to have any issues with that as far as the number and type of plantings and things along those lines. Item 4, we do not believe we can do. We can't do it. To recess those entryways would take away a pretty substantial amount of square footage of the building. Because it wasn't initially designed that way, it's also terribly expensive. The work that's already there would have to be substantially redone on that south elevation of the building. We don't believe that the swinging of the doors is going to create a real issue there at all with the amount of actual foot traffic that is there or that will be there. So 4 would be a no from our perspective. Number 5, we have no issue with that. The stoop would be constructed and faced with the same exact handset brick that's going to be on the building. So there won't be just a concrete stoop sitting there. It would be attractive and it'll match. I think we already talked about the stairs. Gary has in the last iteration of plans, I think from April, the way the slope of the ADA ramps work. We don't have an issue with that. There's no grades greater than 5 degrees. So they're all ADA compliant, and to put steps there would make it actually more difficult, we think, to move around on the site. And I think when we talked about moving the utilities and moving the light pole and the fire hydrant, number 7, number 7 is not an issue. We have no problem dedicating right of way back and forth. Certainly give the town unfettered access and easement over our frontage of our property all the way through the stoop if they like, in exchange for whatever easement we might need out front for that stoop. So that's where we're at in regard to that. And as far as the technical setup of it, those would be more questions obviously for Gary. But that's where we're at. So we're finding, I guess, 1, 2, 3, 5, and 7. 6 is already, I think staff's indicated that the sidewalk's not really part of the wish list at this point.
John, I saw also here that the architect and your engineer is guaranteeing that it'll be frost proof. Stuff.
They do that.
Okay. Do you have to disclose that to a future buyer that the building wasn't built below the frost rate?
I don't know about the disclosures in a commercial setting. That would normally be a due diligence item for an inspector to find out. But
Yeah, it's hard to dig underneath their roof if you don't know.
you know what I mean? Yeah, I understand. Again, that's an issue for the owner, engineer, the architect. I mean, that, from the town's perspective, I understand, with the buildings that were falling any type of disrepair. But in my mind, I guess that's more of a private issue between those parties as to what will ultimately be done.
Does any members of the commission have any questions for Mr. Reed?
I've heard a conversation around the fire hydrant, the tree and the lamppost, and and you just went through 1 through 7. I'm not sure that that's covered in 1 through 7. Where does,
No, right, before I address those Councilman 1 through 7, I said right above that, so they talk about town engineer, Jill Tomaso, in her opinion, the presidents of telephone, electric, and fiber will not prevent the relocation. Doesn't prevent, but at what price? Like I said, you can do anything with limitless resources. We moved a couple hundred feet of fiber optic cable for $500,000, no problem. It's a $40 million project, so it was material, but not going to stop an underpass, right? But a project like this, that's building this size in this location, to dig all that up and move it, relocate it, I can't imagine what that's going to
are you saying that it would need to be relocated to put a light pole there or plant trees?
We feel that it would at least temporarily. At least temporarily, and you'll notice they're not very deep. I think the fiber optic line is 12 to 18 inches across the site.
So does that mean that the entire streetscape plan is untenable because those utilities run there?
The sidewalk would continue to be where it is now. The stoop would be installed behind the fire hydrant up next to the building for access to the south entrances.
I mean, it sounds like you're making the case that we had to move the utilities for the underpass. This is not a train tracks and underpass, it's a fire hydrant. And do we have any official opinion or engineer's opinion or construction opinion about what it actually would take to move the fire hydrant, the lamppost, and then plant the trees as laid out by the ordinance?
I don't have that in my possession. All I was told was by the contractor is that it is particularly cost prohibitive to try to do that.
And what's the cost?
Around $100,000 is what I was told.
Are you talking about moving the fire hydrant or moving the fiber optic cable? Because I think that those things can fit in between those two utilities and still have enough clear space on the sidewalk for ADA. You have to have.
Please don't take this the wrong way. I don't think we were before.
I'm Jill
Okay, that
Tomaso.
makes more sense.
Town engineer.
I didn't know.
The fire hydrant is probably easier because you can do a back truck, you can probably suck out, you're gonna go lower than the lines there, then you gotta be below grade. I don't know how they're electric.
I mean, I've seen several utility installations where they dig the trench and they have a gas line going across the top and they support it while it's exposed and they, put the pipes underneath and then they close the hole back up. So my recommendation was not to put them where they're shown on the plan right now because they're right on top of that electric line, I believe it is, that's close to the curb. But to split the difference between the electric line and the fiber optic line. Put all those things right in the middle of there, we're dealing with 12.7 feet. And just eyeballing it because I, didn't have it, looking at it on the computer, it looks like there's more than enough room to have a 5-foot distance between any obstruction on the sidewalk. That's all we need for ADA.
I mean, the way that we're proposing it, the fire hydrant is just beyond where the stoop will be. That will be all, brick based and everything. Fire hydrant will be right there, right by it, perfectly accessible, not covered in any way. Essentially, it's where it's not. It's not going to, hasn't hurt anybody yet. I don't propose that it's going to hurt anybody in the future. Or be more or less accessible than it is.
We have at least 5 feet to wheel past it on the sidewalk. Does anyone know
Well,
that?
yes, because
There
their
won't be
proposed
any
sidewalk
sidewalk
is
there.
5 feet, but it's right up against the roadway too, right? We like to have a parkway between the sidewalk and cars.
I mean, the hydrant, now you see where the roadway is, and then there's the course of decorative brick, and then there's the sidewalk, and then there's the hydrant. And the stoop will be behind it. It will, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to move that. Will run behind it. So if it's here or out here, the idea of digging up the lines and moving around and risking breaking something and paying for it,
And Tom, what is the benefit of moving the hydrant?
The benefit would be essentially moving all of these sidewalk obstructions out adjacent to the curb, which would be in line with the landscaped area, leaving this entire area adjacent to the building as a clear walkway.
So people can walk to and from the train.
Right, so that people are not pushed closer to the street, but are rather closer to the building, away from the street. And it's a matter of pedestrian safety and comfort.
In the town's replanning on Ridge Road, is the town planning on moving all this? Is this what we're looking at doing in the future of the Ridge Road drawing? Is this something that town is going to be doing anyways?
Well, yes, in certain areas, yeah, that would be part of it, but there's a lot of work involved.
Right.
In the overall streetscaping plan.
I guess my question is, if that lamp post there is a decorative lamp post, which I'm assuming the town put up. So if they were planning on whoever developed that to move that lamp post, why would we put up the lamp post in the first place?
That was one.
Prior to plan just came out. It's a new streetscape.
Looks like a pretty new lamp post to me.
I bet you.
Oh, if you get close, well, actually,
There may have been a replacement.
this is like a little, if I can interject this, with you, where you're going kind of, but I've had many residents tell me, please, 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 for the sake of everyone, take those down. They're chipped, the bulbs, the things don't match, et cetera. So I don't know if having someone actually move that is, a good use of resources for anybody. Just because I think that's all gonna come down. People are begging me to take them down, so. Well, actually, they're too, they said when you drive down the road, it's been something that people have complained about sort of ever since they went up, is that there's so many things. It's like, you have your wooden poles, you have the light source, that there are too many, that it should have been spaced out more. Tom, having here, like kind of that.
Yeah.
So I mean, I
yeah.
don't even know if that needs to be. And you could say the same thing, 10 feet down the road, 20, whatever. It's just kind of a general comment about.
It's kind of like, if you go to your first picture that you showed, that kind of shows down the street.
It's, this one. I just want to say that that's a good point, and there is a Cobra headlight right across the street. So if we're thinking about, reducing the cost to the developer, just eliminating that light pole would be one way to do it rather than relocating it. I don't think it's there for minimum light, it's not there for minimum illumination. I think it's just there for ornamentation. And I think we would probably be fine without it. I mean, that would be one way to save on cost.
Is it likely that when the streetscape project is done, around hopefully $34 million, that we're going to redo these lamp posts?
Yes.
I know these are probably not the dark sky compliant ones, so. I mean,
Right.
If that seems like a logical approach to me, if it's not required for minimum light, they're not the kind that we want. We're getting talk of too many, I guess from the applicants, do they want to have this part of the street illuminated? Is it important to have a lamp post in front of your facility?
I would think.
Sounds like there's consensus on the lamp post.
Yeah.
So then if the hydrant can be relocated, then we have a nice clear pathway, again, keeping in mind that this is right next to the train station that is going to be the center of the heart of our town. It sounds like there's a recommendation of where it can be located, where it would not interfere with the utilities. Utilities would not need to be moved for $100,000, whatever that would cost. So that also seems reasonable.
Yeah, did you say, Tom, we're gonna move them all out there? I mean, I guess I was having, because we want people to, when you said push to the street, like, it looks like it's pretty far back now, so I wasn't, but in the plan, I can't remember, did we have all of those pushed closer to the curb?
Yeah, the way that you would do a streetscape now, I'm not sure why it was done like this in the past, but typically you have your curb
Mhm.
and then you have what's called sort of a amenity zone. And that includes like your street trees, your lamp poles, your utilities, any like bike parking and things like that.
Mhm.
And then that area between that amenity zone, which is usually like 5 or 6 feet wide,
Mhm.
and the buildings is the sort of the clear walk path.
I have a feeling I know why it went there. Everything close to the road gets run over in our town. That could be.
I,
I don't know, I just
Well,
don't know.
I still don't know how the car
We
got
need to
motor
put that fire hydrant right in front of Munster Donuts.
Definitely, it would be run over. No, I don't know, that's what I'm thinking, I wonder if we've had that problem for a long time.
So tonight, and this is a question, I'm not sure what, is this something that goes on the town council? Is this a paper recommendation? Because these are all different variances. I mean, how does the planning commission have authority to dictate what happens in the public way? Seems like kind of outside my scope of work. Realm.
I think it is outside the school.
Right.
Planning commission.
I think so too.
well, I mean, to the extent that whenever there's a project that involves
Yeah, it's
a
part of the
public
plan.
way, it
Right.
becomes part of the plan.
Right, but does it go on to the council as a favorable recommendation? I don't know. I mean,
Well, I
I'm just
think-
a late person on this board.
Well, I think ultimately the agreement as far as the encroachment, that
Depends on what
has
it
to go
is.
to the council, right?
Depends on the topic that you're addressing. Not all, everything on this list is one door, given the council.
So I guess I'm right down the stairs, that's not council decision. Moving the fire hydrant, moving a light post, impeding the public way. I don't know, I don't know if that should be my decision or not. I mean, legally, probably not.
No, and we'll get that straightened out. John and I have already talked about some of these things. So, the encroachment, the easement, whatever we're gonna do, that will take care of it. That will have to go to the council for final approval. Again, not everything.
And I obviously don't know what goes on in the town council and the grant that you're requesting and everything, but I'm assuming down Ridge Road, there are other similar fire hydrants located at the same line as this, in a straight line. So if you move this, are you going straight, jogging out, jogging out, and then coming back? Or with the grant, you're planning on moving them all forward?
So I think they vary around town. The water line is in the street and then there's a lateral that comes out to the fire hydrant.
Okay,
So it's not like we're sitting right on top of the water
Okay.
line and we would,
oh, so the water, they're just moving that. The water line is coming from this, under the street.
right, I think.
I'm not a civil engineer, nor do I play one on TV. My daughter's one, my son's studying to be one. Maybe they should be sitting here. So.
Yeah, no, it's, I didn't know either, but Mark Hyde, the fire chief, went out and he marked the line where the fire. So that's the water line coming off of, you can see that blue line.
Oh,
So,
The main itself is typically on the street. I guess all I'm saying is it's where it is now. Sidewalks where it is now, and where it's always been. We're just putting a building by there. I don't know why that necessitates a redesign of the whole.
As I understand it, the problem is that the way the building's been constructed, there's a stoop that needs to be constructed, which sort of encroaches in where the sidewalk normally is now. So the proposal is to have that whole area paved.
Yeah, I know that's what the town staff's proposal is. I just know that if I were changing something or encroaching on it, what we're building, including the stoop, isn't going to impede or touch any of that. It's not gonna touch the old sidewalk, it's not gonna hurt the old sidewalk that's there. Sidewalk will be connected to that building by the stoop and through the sidewalk access and through the parking lot as well. Obviously, this is one side of a larger, really a four-sided building. There's entrances on other sides as well. Anybody who parks in the parking lot is never gonna touch the south side of the building.
So you said something about, is it paved under the stoop or not? I mean, I've seen the drawings, but, so you're saying, is the grass gonna stay there?
Well,
No,
that's
it's all gonna be-
our proposal is yes, that the grass would stay
Oh,
and that,
and you.
because we're not creating, by building this building, creating a condition that somehow hampers the usage of that sidewalk.
No, I meant the grass, like, but so you have to walk across the grass to get on.
No, there will be
Oh.
connections.
Oh.
There will be connections
Okay.
right to the
That's-
sidewalk.
all right.
Yeah, with ramps at ADA grade.
This was the original proposal,
Mhm.
the sidewalk where it is. Here's the request.
Green spaces. Yeah.
The building's now encroached on here, so let's make it because that's the drain. And we've got lots of people
Right.
traversing.
So you don't want to pave all the way across in front of the building, like what's being shown. You don't want to install a sidewalk all the way across. You just want the sidewalk to go to the stoop.
The sidewalk that's there doesn't go away.
No, I know that.
Gary, Gary, if you want to show where it
Sure.
connects to the. to where-
The existing concrete walk, and why every time do I?
Well, when you touch it,
touch
it moves.
that?
Just try not to touch it. Just point it. You don't touch it.
Oh. The existing sidewalk runs along the front,
Mhm.
but putting in this driveway, well, we've got to take it out. And we're going to put in new concrete for the driveway. We don't want the sidewalk going down onto this driveway. This sidewalk exists farther up, closer to the building to the east. So what we propose to do is put the walk in line with the old walk. This used to be the driveway here. Put a new walk in line with the old walk. There we go again. I'm sorry. I'm trying not to touch it, but my hand doesn't seem to agree.
So this one,
At this point, we would turn, come up in line with the old walk to the east. We would have a new walk that would go up toward our building. Handicap ramp, a sidewalk with effectively a handicap ramp going to our building. And that ties into the new sidewalk stoop in front, which has steps down on the west. The only reason any of this is there is for ADA handicap access. None of this, we didn't want this, but we realized subsequent to the construction of the building, when we actually saw this thing on the field, that somebody goofed because we had ramps coming out of the doors going down to that existing sidewalk. Won't work for handicap. This is necessary for the handicapped. All of this monkey business is planned out here with the fire hydrant moving, not unnecessary, the light pole moving, unnecessary. Playing around with fiber optic line. Well, if you don't break it, maybe you get away cheap, but Bob Delco, who's a contractor, said he doesn't even want to try and move that fire hydrant with the fiber optic line there. Just for instance, I was looking before the meeting. And I noticed an old picture of Lanier School here on Ridge Road. Now it's where the Performing Arts Center is. Lanier School gone. In fact, my cousin went to grade school there. When they built the Performing Arts Center at the Lanier School site, there had to be a lot of communications lines done. More than $500,000 worth. But the Performing Arts Center is what we're talking about here. Talking about less than 2,500 square foot building, probably be used for offices. That excess money for doing the unnecessary things, I think I say unnecessary, out front, besides making it properly handicap accessible and doing that in such a way that is conforming with the approved plan of the building, I think is money is just not there in this project. It's just not there. So it was approved September of 2021. It was approved, of course, of that stoop in front because handicapped access was an error. But even at that point, none of this other stuff was on the table. Now, how it got on the table between now and then, just simply because we want to make this building handicap accessible, is quite a bit beyond my understanding. But
Well, Tom,
there are things that, there are probably quite a few things that are beyond my understanding.
well, I think because we did the whole streetscape and everything, the only thing I'm thinking when we talk about this being paved all the way up, I agree that that's what we want the look when it all happens, when it goes. But I'm wondering if we're overreaching from, because when we get the grant, we start doing this work, we're going to do it for every business going down. We're not going to go to each individual business and ask them to do it, correct? I mean, we'll have to phase it, obviously, but I'm just wondering, are we overreaching? And just because they happen to be building a building there, we're like, well, you go ahead and take care of that part. I mean, and would it be better that when we're ready to do all the work, we know, because sometimes, and I've learned at times, we're like, you have the best laid plan, and then you think, oh my gosh, because of X, Y, Z down here, we're gonna have to change that up a little bit. So I mean, is it better to do it cohesively and all together? That's just.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That's a decision I think that you can make, that you'll have to make. I would say that if we were to get the grant, I don't know exactly what the timeline is for making that, for that announcement. I don't think it's going to be for a while. But we may not have to, actually do a whole lot of changes to this area. I don't know how much work we would be doing, on either side of the McD tracks because of the, just dealing with McD on that. And they're pretty much set how they're going to be. So I think with the curb line is probably going to be set right here. I don't think it's going to change much. And I know that we're probably going to have the same general cross section in this area. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I think that if they were to implement this now, it would probably be something that I doubt we would have to go back and change it up. I think your point about the light pole is a really good one though. Yeah, because we're probably going to have completely different light poles. But I think the general layout of the sidewalk and the planting areas would probably stay the same.
And even if they do stay the same, I'm just asking, are we overreaching by, because that's going to be deeded to us, or whatever language you want to call it, is our right, it's our property. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just wondering, it's an improvement to our property. If it were a big building, a mass, like a large project, I know we asked for public improvements, but for the size of it, I just don't know that it matches.
If you're looking
This is for discussion. I mean, I'm just.
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime
look, as a town, anytime that we can pass the expense on to the developer, that's great. We should be able to do that. But to continue, and I've used this before, but to move the goalpost on these guys in the middle of, as we doing this, and yes, I 100% agree that you guys screwed up in building the building. That was your error, not our error. But you think if we're gonna have you're going for a grant and we're gonna be doing all of this, to have them incur the extra costs now and moving the goalposts on them, I don't know that that's the right thing to do.
I guess I could understand if this was an established building, like we wouldn't say, they're making a small change to the building, and so now you have to move all of these things out front because we're gonna, eventually come through anyways. I am curious about, maybe I'll table that question, what happens when NIPSCO or NICD actually moves the big utility pole? But this is new construction, right? And we've got a streetscape to create a whole new look and feel for the town. I don't think we'd be doing likely a streetscape if there weren't a train station going in right next door to here, because that is what we want to deliver to our residents and to visitors to our town. There is a point made that the plan was approved in September without moving the fire hydrants and the light posts. And I guess I'd like to understand when the plans changed, what impact did that have that now says I guess what did change from us that now that the stoop needs to be built and the construction and the building isn't being built to the plan that was approved in September. Could you explain what changed that says that this is now the right way to do it with the larger sidewalk? Did you guys understand what I was saying?
Yeah.
You have to add a brick wall for the elevation difference with the stuff. That elevation wall is pushing out for a building probably 5 feet, right?
That's correct.
Right, so you got a wall now that's gonna be raised up above sidewalk level that's off the building, where before the sidewalk, we assume was gonna be sloping to match the existing sidewalk, right?
So now there's a brick wall and you're gonna have a little patch of grass and then there's a fire hydrant in the patch of grass or whatever you're gonna landscape.
Hardscape.
Was the regular, was the sidewalk that was there now, was that originally, that gonna stay the sidewalk?
Yes, it was gonna stay there.
They were gonna blend the building sidewalk down to the existing sidewalk, but you can't do that with the building sidewalk.
In other words, for the
The only
handicap
portion
access.
of the only portion of the
Gary, hang on
sidewalk
one
was
second.
gonna change
Gary?
with respect to over
Gary,
here.
can you hang on one second? The ramps would be at too steep of a grade to meet ADA guidelines.
That's right.
Because of how high the foundation is, okay? Now, the foundation, and I don't want to get into semantics about this, it's 6 inches taller than it was supposed to be at the plans that were approved. But we have really a 2-foot problem because the elevation shouldn't have been approved at that level. I think we can all agree on that. And that's, spilled milk under the bridge. So to recreate the handicapped access, that's why there's a stoop there, so that the ramps can be placed in different locations to get underneath the 5% grade to meet the ADA guidelines. That is all accomplished without touching the fire hydrant, the light pole. That's all be accomplished at our expense, including the ledge on the other side where the brick ledge is going to go down to grade. So there won't be any visible foundation concrete. The stoop's not going to be a big hunting concrete, it's going to have brick on it. I don't know how that stoop creates the necessity of moving fire hydrant and light pole. That have been there, it will continue to be there. We didn't build anything in them, on them.
And the original plan did not have you moving them either.
No,
But the original plan had the building.
Matching probably existing, right?
Pardon me?
The original plan, you were matching existing elevations.
I think the elevation was always 624.
The elevation was always 622 at the floor of the building. The problem simply was the accessibility.
So
I just, I think to answer Steve's question,
This was approved
with,
September 2021.
And this was grass still. This
Yeah.
is.
None of that's gonna be changed.
Yeah, you're
Now,
sloping down, imagine this.
We've got to use up this 2.5 feet roughly. 2.5 with access in front of the building. That's these ramps.
But where the grass is remaining, you're gonna beautify the grass. Like, there's some grass still, like, what you're asking, for there to be grass.
Which is significant. The stoop, it's not like the stoop's gonna be like here.
Right.
The stoop is gonna be about that high. That's gonna be brick on the front of that stoop. Concrete on the top. That's all.
So I can skateboard on it. That's a good place for me to do my tricks.
there'll be a railing on
This
top of
wall?
the stoop.
There is a railing.
We're putting a special ramp just for
Oh.
you.
We are, the handicap one.
Oh,
We're getting old, you know, you and I.
Thank you for
We're
that.
getting old, you know.
Everybody will be out of plastic and bought a Kmart.
So Tom, you were gonna explain something.
I was just gonna explain a couple things. The first is, Steve, yes, that is the reason why the project is getting reviewed again, is because of that encroachment into the public right of way and the diminishment of the public right of way.
Yeah.
And how that sort of conflicts with the idea of our streetscape plan, which is wide accessible sidewalks. And then I think the other thing just to keep in mind as well is like, this is how this project was represented to us, right? And there was another illustrative rendering that showed a similar scene. And I think, you know, what we're going to get with that plan is not going to really look a whole lot. I mean, the building might look like this, but it's going to be, you know, behind a railing. You're not going to have somebody standing at grade there. You're going to be down, and there will be no landscaping around the building. There will be a stretch of grass, I guess, a patch of grass, and with a fire hydrant in it. And so none of, someplace for the dogs. I mean, I guess from my perspective, it's, you know, this is a good opportunity to really do something really nice in this area and have it sort of match our streetscaping standards. And also kind of fix the problem with the building grade.
Can you scroll a little to the left? May I approach? Just want to make sure I'm seeing
You're in
this.
charge. So you
Right,
can do
okay.
it.
This is what we're talking about down here, right? Where this man is standing with the tree, or suppose it's-
Yeah, I mean,
could be a woman.
that's sort of what we would ultimately have, yeah.
So what was approved in September was that it would look like this. But now what we're getting instead is the stoop up to here. With,
No, the stoop goes up to where he's standing.
The
If
stoop would
I-
drop
if-
down the building.
If
Yeah,
I'm just trying to
I,
picture what.
Yeah, no, it's hard to picture.
if
that
I
guy
may,
standing on-
this gentleman will be standing on the stoop. The stoop would simply drop about 2 feet right here and go out to the front sidewalk. That's all.
So
There'd be-
here the
there'd be
stoop
a
will-
little railing behind him. But he'll be standing, we don't want somebody to have to go on their hands and knees, climb into the building. He's gonna walk into the building at that elevation, just like he looks, but he'll be on that front stoop. That front stoop will be 5 feet wide right here. There'll be a little railing behind him coming up about to where his butt is.
Yeah.
Then it'll go down 18 inches, 2 feet, and back out to the grass,
And then we'll go down so that,
back out to the
This-
sidewalk.
so if it's here or if it's here, that's fine.
Right.
But the thought was there would be a building and then sidewalk here. This would be a small ramp, I suppose.
Right, but there were still small ramps there.
There's supposed to be small ramps so people could access the building.
Right.
But now there's
That's just
this,
too
when you
steep.
drive by, there's this exposed foundation, which will be covered in brick, but it's not a straight, like, I think how, Tom, you just put it, made some sense. There's a, what was the word you used? Diminishment?
Um, Diminishment?
Diminishment, right. There's a diminishment. This is what it was supposed to look like. You put a building there, you walk, there's trees, you go in the front door. And now there's an elevation change with the stoop up there and brick on the front. And then, so there's a diminishment, and what is being proposed is let's make it nice and cement and free of obstructions.
Unfortunately, it just can't be done that way. The building could not be done that way.
No, I understand, but
It is
now,
simply because the grades to the north and the grades to the east wouldn't allow that. This matches effectively the building to the east. This works with the parking lot and the underground storage that we had to do here. We wanted to have an open detention system, but we couldn't. That was somehow stopped.
well, the town's also
But
paying
we could
close to
not,
$1 million to do the
we-
same.
we could not get the building any lower. That's all.
So, and that's how I'm seeing, I don't know what you guys are seeing, but when you look at this plan, you expect it to be clean in that location. And this plan didn't work, so we made some changes that resulted in a diminishment, looking less clean. And so as a compromise, we're trying to say, okay, please let's just cement, put cement sidewalk and get things out of there that make it look now unclean. And we've said, I think we're coming to a consensus of, okay, the light post, that makes sense. We don't need to have a light post there, so let's compromise also there. And we said it's possible to reroute the fire hydrant and move it into, I forget the term you used, Tom, the 5 or 6 foot strip of the amenity zone. And we start to build something that actually the planning commission, the council, the train riders, hopefully the owner can feel good about in this place. It might not be as big as the art center, but it is a very strategic location, maybe one of the most strategic locations in this ward, in this part of town. And there have been a lot of discussion, there have been a lot of variances given for this property, there have been some mistakes, there have been all sorts of things, and we're trying to compromise over and over and over. And it seems like we're coming to a pretty reasonable compromise. And I think we're getting close to a place where we can agree with and there have been 7 things requested. And so we're also compromising on those 7 things.
Councilman, may I ask you, is your desire to see that area hardscape so that there's more area for people to walk for passage? Or is it to hardscape that entire frontage area and with the fire?
But I think we want it to be clean, enjoyable, free, open experience. If we were rebuilding all of Ridge Road, we would build it like the proposal. And so when we're putting in new buildings on Ridge Road, we'd like to have it be like we would build it if we were.
So let me put it this way, if we were willing to make that whole area where the sidewalk is now, add additional sidewalk in the middle where the grass strip is, and leave those utilitarian items where they are, would that be acceptable?
Well, I mean, we can look at the whole council. I think we're saying we'd like to ideally move both of those things because as you're walking by, hopefully there's high traffic here. People are taking their kids in strollers. Like to not have the light post, the telephone pole or whatever it is, and the fire hydrant there. The telephone pole will be moved by Nicky, who's doing improvements. The light post, we've said, maybe it's not necessary here. Let's get away with any of the cost of redoing that or even maintaining it. And so, yes, please move the fire hydrant.
I guess just from my perspective, is if I see that much sidewalk walkable area in the front, when I'm walking by, do I care? Does it hinder me that it's there or that it's there? If I have the same amount of space to walk by.
Well, there are going to be, as I understand, landscaping and trees and
Well, if the sidewalk stays where it's supposed to be, those trees would be put there. The trees are also gonna go on top of utilities that are 18 inches under there.
Just for
You know,
clarification.
horrifying idea.
So Tom, are those trees that you're indicating there, is that we're asking them to do trees there?
Yeah, if you look at this plan, this is,
It's not our.
this 10 by 5 section
Mhm.
is proposed to be like an open planter with a tree planted in it. And everything else, and so this right here, this would be green, this would be green, this would be green, and this would be green. And so the sidewalk would be here against the curb and here against the curb. And this is where the fire hydrant is, would be. And if you recall that, that drawing that was presented, or the utility scan, there's a utility line that's about somewhere like right here. And then there's another one that's kind of about right here.
They're shown on there.
Oh, here's one,
Is that the one marked
and
110?
here's one. And I don't think so, because they didn't update it since they got the, oh, maybe, yeah, I'm not sure. But essentially what we would do is you obviously wouldn't put it right on top of the line, but there's room between the two lines to relocate that fire hydrant. And talking about this with Jill, actually the shallowness of these lines is actually a good thing, because you can actually just plant the trees underneath the lines go down. The root ball would,
Oh,
the root ball would be
ones are-
between the utility lines, and the roots would spread, and it would not conflict with the
But we,
lines.
but
so you've
they're-
got the sidewalk here, utility lines are here, you dig a hole and you plant the tree down here. Did I have that more or less right? Just grow underneath it.
Essentially, yes.
so they're gonna have to tear out the side, make a place, make this green spot.
Right, there would be some demolition.
Are these the, it's been so long, is this the approved landscaping drawing of the trees there? This is what we approved before, or is this new, these trees?
This is new, because the old landscaping plan did not have, was a different, based on different site plan.
Because it was closer to, there was room by the building, so you didn't have them putting the trees out front.
Correct. And
So-
just to be, and I just, sorry, don't mean to talk over you. You know, just to be clear, they are replacing, even with this plan, they're replacing all of this sidewalk. They're demoing the existing driveway and the existing, pouring new curb for this, for where the existing curb cut is now,
Right,
and putting in an entirely new driveway and curb cut. So all, you see all this dark outlined sidewalk, that's all new sidewalk.
Mhm.
They're demoing all this sidewalk along here. And they're putting in a concrete triangle, pork chop, and all new pavement. So they're basically leaving only this section intact. So what we're simply saying is, in addition to doing this, relocate this here and do this as well. Nick's already moving this sidewalk over here, up here, and it'll come down there. So we're really talking about just this area here and, you know, some additional concrete between those planting areas. If they wanted to make the planting areas even wider, I mean, I said 10 by 5, that's like a minimum. It could be made wider, which would save the cost of the concrete.
so.
So, sorry, the last one. Oh,
no,
the
go ahead.
planting areas could be wider, which gives more room to relocate the hydrant, so it doesn't be too close to the sidewalk.
Well, I guess I should clarify that. When I say wider, I mean, yeah, extend along the curb
Okay.
longer rather than deeper into towards the building.
So you don't have to put as much concrete between trees, between planters.
Right.
Yeah.
To me, looking at this utility locate, it looks like you got plenty enough room to put a tree in between the two. To put trees in between the utility location, you got 5 feet between them. If you take that light pole out of there, even if you leave the fire hydrant, you got enough room to walk by that, if you move the sidewalk there. That's what it looks like to me on here. You got the utility located, so you got plenty of trees for there to put in between. You just might have to hardscape a little bit more towards the building. And then you don't have to mess around moving the fire hydrant. The light pole is probably an easy one to take out. You just remove the light pole, break the foundation minus a foot, make sure the wires are hooked up and go.
And then to the point of what it's like to walk here, now we have trees giving some shielding from Ridge Road. People can hit the trees instead of the hydrant. But you're not walking right on Ridge Road. You now have this amenity zone, which also has green space, landscaping in that spot. That's kind of the idea of the streetscape, isn't it? To make it
That
more.
is-
Tom, go back to the scan, the first of the scan pictures. First one. The one that shows down, keep going.
Really, could you approach?
Blow this one up.
I object. Always wanted to do that.
Gary, would you think right here, there's room to put trees between here? It looks like you got at least 5 feet apart, right?
Oh, there's about 7 feet there right now. Roy.
Right there
2
between
feet
here-
of-
between
2 feet
here
of
and here,
brick
right?
stuff and 5 feet of wall.
Right. I don't know if you got to move that right now, but you have to hardscape in here. If you're gonna put trees right here, to be able to bring the walkway out this way, so people aren't walking the trees, you're not by the curb. You know what I'm saying? And the fire hydrant wouldn't have to move at all.
If we put those landscape areas out there, 5 foot by however many feet they're gonna be, then you have to have the sidewalk.
Right here.
up
Gotta move it
against
out
the
this way,
stoop's
right here, right? But your stoop's only coming out to here. Your stoop's coming out to here, right? That's
Right.
probably less than 5 feet, that fire hydrant, right? Your stoop wasn't going in that fire hydrant anyways, right?
No, not-
Right, so your stoop's going up here, but you still have enough room probably with a 5 foot sidewalk. Usually when I do the tree grates in the city, they're just 5 foot by 5 foot tree gates. That's pretty typical when I'm doing them in Chicago,
Yeah, I mean,
you know, and it looks like you'd have, I don't know, Jill, what do you think? You got enough room to put some tree gates right in
I
here?
think there's room to split the difference, but
I mean, you could cheat them this way a little
Making
bit.
sure There's enough clear space between that fire hydrant and
Well, you gotta have at least a 5 foot sidewalk, but you have to remove that thing, so you have at least 5 foot coming in between the tree and a walk here. You might have to kick the walk out this way a bit and leave the fire hydrant. Moving the light pole isn't, that's not as big of a deal, the fire hydrant, you know, you're just taking it down, knocking the foundation down and making sure the wires are just getting hooked up and cover the top with concrete. Probably just sound through foundation, you know?
I understand the moving fire hydrant is the one that's probably.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just said, I think the
Power-
fire hydrant, as long as you got
power
enough
pole,
walkway
like
in
this.
between, and the town engineer to work with you on that, then you can put, you know, those tree grates down the sidewalk, so you have plantings in there. And I think it's still 5 feet between the fire hydrant and the trees in there to be able to head down there. You just have a wider kind of walk down there in front of the building. You might want to pave the whole thing, just be done with it, then you don't have to maintain, I don't know, just pave the whole thing in front and have your couple tree grates. It's like that all over South Chicago.
I mean, I think,
that work for you?
and that's possible to do with the tree grates. I guess this is just my perspective. That would be less costly to do open planting areas rather than tree grates, just because when you use those tree grates, you have to use special.
And you can use them, I mean,
Soil.
you could just make a 5 foot by 5 foot opening, not do it, you gotta make the, obviously, a tree is not gonna affect the sidewalk, but probably small diameter trees and stuff. I mean, I think that you get worked out in between those utilities, and you could probably cheat them towards the street a little bit, the trees. And if you hardscape that in between your brick wall and the existing sidewalk, you just take the light pole out and you leave the fire hydrant in. I'm just throwing suggestions out to try to make it work.
No, I don't disagree with that.
You know,
I mean,
I think our whole goal is try to move pedestrians away from the curb, you know.
I understand what you're saying, but then, you know, in the same breath, we want to have plenty of pedestrian space on the sidewalk. So let's take some of that sidewalk up and plant some trees in. It's a little disconcerting because it's kind of It's an opposite of the goal of
Let's
that.
create a buffer between the traffic and the pedestrians.
Yeah, I mean, the entirety of Ridge Road is sidewalk. All the way. Beginning to start to finish, there's no trees and sidewalks. We'd be the
That's
only,
why-
we'd be the only.
Well,
But
we
I
are
think that's all
trying,
changing.
yeah.
That's
we
why it's
are.
changing it.
Yeah.
And you're the first one to build something new.
Because I will tell you this, because I'm just telling you, because we have a 2-foot problem, which there is a perfectly viable engineering fix for. We've opened the floodgate to 100-something thousand. I like to pontificate and do this stuff. I hate do this, but I'm not writing checks.
John,
It's, I'm gonna tell you, it's state. You wouldn't believe what this building costs.
if I may, you had said, and correct me if I didn't hear something right, because there's a lot being said. So you were good with doing the sidewalk up, hardscaping that whole thing, correct? Or no?
I mean, I'm not making those decisions. If we don't have to move the hydrant guy, and this became,
I'm not
This-
the owner.
this all became sidewalk. This all became side, because you're gonna have, I mean, they're gonna have stoop out to here. You're gonna have these however many
Yeah, it's
feet.
really not.
This is gonna be a concrete.
Doesn't it?
You can ride your bike on it, you can
No,
walk
he means
on it.
not that much more
No,
to do.
no, I'm saying you only had probably 5 feet by 130 feet of extra concrete, right?
That's what I'm talking about.
So you
is
got
that I'm trying to show Guy this area without moving.
Isn't that sidewalk gonna be right up against the fire hydrant?
It's gonna be right around the fire. That'll all be, there won't be grass there.
There was all the meetings I was at, everyone was concerned someone's gonna walk into that thing. Or ride a bike. into
Well,
it.
what I'm trying to tell you, they're willing to make a concession to not have to move that hydrant. I can only ask you yes or no.
Well, I'm not the owner, and right now, I don't know what the owner's position is with anything, because we've been at this for, this is our 3rd year.
Mr. Costanza, why would the owner be here to talk about his property?
Discussed.
Yeah.
Because we were told,
I always thought this. the whole
yeah,
time
if you want me to
were-
answer the question, I'll answer it.
Yeah.
The answer to your question is, I've been told by Mr. Vanderwoody for the last 2 years, yeah, this is what I want, we took notes, we did it, everything should be fine. And it just has gone on and on, for now, this is the 3rd year. The owner is in complete disgust, and that's just, you
I
ask
don't
him,
think I've ever met the owner of this building.
no, you have not. You have not, and right now, I don't even know if his plans are to build another thing. Because he doesn't think it's ever gonna be approved, because every time we've come to the hearings, Mr. Vanderwood would say, do what we ask, we write it all down, we give it to Mr. Doringa, we moved, we changed, the building was put, they asked it, we've moved,
Well, we're here tonight on a special meeting. The planning commission is here to make final approval on this. And we're getting really close, I think.
I don't know, I just don't know anymore.
I guess you can only approve what you can approve. And the man with the other checkbook can either say yes or no. Builder or not builder.
Well, I'm just, because it came in at 100, and I'm just trying to understand, because it was 100,000, so, but the big cost, we've taken away the big cost of the moving of the fire hydrant, and what was the other thing, the moving of the fiber optics.
light
and-
bulb.
Yeah, I know, so that was the real,
Well, I just don't know, if we cut one cost out and made a twin out of it doing something else, I don't know anymore. Because we've never been able to finalize anything, that's what our problem is.
no, we
Yeah.
want to tonight, though. I think that, because we all, like he said, we all came in on
It would seem to me as an outsider, just a builder, it would seem to me.
Can I make a motion? Sure. I'm gonna make a motion that we approve this as we've all kind of discussed, of not moving, as we've discussed, not moving the fire hydrant, but basically this, whatever the numbers that Johnny said that he would, Mr. Reed said that he would, that they would accept, and then allow it where it's a hardscape. I love construction, talk hardscape. To the fire hydrant, not move the fire hydrant, remove the lamp post, and proceed accordingly.
So basically, I just want to make sure we have this clear.
Yeah, you can clarify it, because I don't know really what I was saying, but.
Right, no, I'll make sure, and Mr. Reed, you correct me if I'm wrong. So the plans are subject, we're agreeing that the plans are subject to review by the final engineer, the final town engineer. We're agreeing that along the west side of the building, earth will be sloped up around the foundation. The brick ledge will be cut down so the brick can be installed to cover all unfinished concrete to the finished grade. Or we're agreeing number 3, revised landscape plan be submitted to the town for approval. Number 5, the stoops will be constructed same masonry material used on the building. We did not agree on the storefronts, correct?
Correct.
Number 6, if possible, stairs be added. There is on the east side, but you said you have the ramp, so there's no
Yeah,
stairs.
so we
on
were
the
gonna
east
pass
side.
on
Yes, on that. And then 7, public sidewalk easement be recorded. That's all legalese for the town to work out with you and your client. Is that
So, yeah, right, so what it comes down to is 1, 2, 3, 5.
right? In addition to moving the light pole and
Removing the
Not
light.
moving it.
removing the
light
lamp,
bulb.
the light, town light pole and hardscaping area. correct?
Yes, correct. That's exactly what I said.
That's exactly what I said. Just not in this great detail.
And what do you mean by hardscaping?
Brick
But these
pavers,
are-
concrete, whatever is a hard surface that a bike, a stroller, anything can go down there.
So a layperson like.
It wouldn't be
might think it's
asphalt,
like
it would be
sidewalk.
concrete or brick pavers.
I think it would be a sidewalk built according to the town's
Well, it'd be-
specifications.
Well, it'd be, yeah, whatever the engineering.
I mean, if they wanted to do ornamental
Right.
pavers, I think we would probably permit them on getting, since they probably are not gonna wanna do that.
Okay, so hardscape just means sidewalk.
Sidewalk.
It doesn't mean like plastic mulch or something.
No, no,
Exactly. So we have a motion on the floor.
I'm sorry.
We have a second motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Now, is this a recommendation to the town council or is this a motion, a favorable recommendation to town council? What is the,
What, how do you want to treat it? I am, you know.
I mean, I guess I would view it, I would view it as an approval of the development plan, conditioned upon town council approval of any items that require town council approval.
Right.
Which would be, you know, the arrangement with respect to the easements,
The
work in the
encroachment.
right of way, that sort of thing.
And so those things have
So nothing.
nothing to do with the actual construction or the right of way and the easements.
Right.
So we're not talking about, council doesn't have to talk about hydrants or trees or anything like that.
I think just the land and the right of way, and how the deed and grant would be done. The town can't give or take land without having some sort of town.
so we have a motion and a second with the amended motion and the respective items that need to go to the town council for review or approval. Yes, okay. Is there any other discussion?
I'd just like to clarify my understanding. So this picture that's up right now, that's what the motion is for.
Yes, except there might be some more hardscape and the light pole is being.
Not including those utilities.
Not including light pole will be removed, no need for light pole, utility will not move, it will stay where it is, and
Fire hydrant will stay where it is.
you're happy with the motion and all of that.
You guys made it.
No, I mean, the ability to traverse that area, and from a construction perspective, that makes sense. Okay,
Any other discussion? That being said, Tom, I can call roll.
Okay, Counselor Mellon,
Yes.
Counselor Tulowitzki,
yes.
Brian Specht,
yes.
Roland Raffin.
Yes. Motion passes. There's no additional items.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Well, somebody's got to filibuster. I don't want Mr. Speck to sleep ever.
Mr. Whitman, for your extra time.
Okay.
I think it's a